Hello, comrades. Today we will be reading Ojibwa Warrior, chapter 17. But before we do that, I'm going to read to y'all the statement of unity. So let me share the screen so y'all can see. All right. Can y'all see this properly? Sorry about that. There we go. Can y'all see this?
Yeah, I can see it.
Gotcha. I just wanted to make sure. All right. So, the Statement of Unity, preface. The U.S. was founded as a colonial settler state based upon white supremacy and slavery, stealing the lands of the indigenous nations, breaking every treaty made with them, and confining them to quote unquote reservations, concentration camps. As the country became more powerful, the eagle sunk its claws into other nations, making war on Mexico and grabbing its northern territory, invading Cuba, Puerto Rico, Hawaii, and the Philippines, and either annexing them outright or making them colonies or neocolonies. And in the 20th century, it became the major imperialist power in the world, exploiting both the people within its boundaries and those in every other country, bullying them with military interventions and robbing them of their right to self-determination. As C.P. Newman stated, we have two enemies to fight, racism and capitalism. Between the two, capitalism is primary. Racism is a byproduct of capitalism. The working people of the world of every ethnicity or nationality face a common enemy that is destroying life on Earth. Our enemy is a small ruling class of property owners controlling most of the world's wealth and resources. We must have our basic needs met to live a good and meaningful life. Food, shelter, healthcare, education, freedom from oppression by the state, and peace with other nations. To obtain these essential things for life, we must have the power to see to it that the abundance that is available is shared equitably. Statement of Unity for the Second Rainbow Coalition. The legacy of the First Rainbow Coalition dates back to its founding on April 4th, 1969, by the original Black Panther Party, original Young Lords, and Young Patriots organization. A number of other organizations joined this coalition not long afterwards, such as the American Indian Movement, Brown Berets, Rising Up Angry, the Red Guards, and others. Since the founding of the United States, the masses had developed a number of popular movements that came together to fight back against the capitalist imperialist system in various ways around particular demands. Nevertheless, none had established a movement quite like the First Rainbow Coalition. This historic movement was the first of its kind that established a model of class struggle like no other. Its charismatic leader, Chairman Fred Hampton of the Illinois chapter of the original Black Panther Party, stated that at the end of the day, we weren't engaged in a race struggle. He said, "It's a class struggle, God damn it." By uniting with the various oppressed ethnicities and masses, they were able to bridge the gap between the various ethnic communities that white supremacy had long sought to keep divided. This class solidarity equipped them with the material basis and class consciousness to see their common class condition, therefore the necessity to form a united front against their common class oppressor, the capitalist imperialist ruling class. The ruling class viewed this as the greatest threat to their class rule, and subsequently used the entire repressive forces of the state, police, courts, jails, prisons, and intelligence agencies, etc., in order to crush this emerging revolutionary socialist movement. We refounded the Rainbow Coalition on May 14th, 2021, with the intent of upholding the legacy of the original Rainbow Coalition. We believe that this historic example is the model for the united front that will best serve our class liberation. By upholding the 10-point program of the original Black Panther Party, which was subsequently adopted and later expanded by the original Young Lords, Young Patriots organization, and all other original Rainbow Coalition members, we established our pragmatic unity. The 6 disciplinary rules that we uphold ties ties all organizations in our coalition to a common professional discipline. History has bestowed upon our generation a common class mission to fulfill. The representatives of the capitalist imperialist ruling class, represented by the Democratic Party and the Republican Party, cannot liberate us. It is their class intention and interest to uphold our common class oppression. Therefore, therefore, it is only we, the oppressed masses of all ethnicities and nationalities, who must build the necessary class solidarity, class consciousness, organizational structures, and a united front that will ultimately liberate ourselves. This is what the Second Rainbow Coalition is committed. This is the historic mission we intend to fulfill. Dare to struggle, dare to win. All members of the coalition, New African Black Panther Party, White Panther Party, Green Party of New Jersey, Poor People's Army, La Masa Nacional de Brown Berets, NASO, North Alabama School for Organizers, New Era Young Lords, Guardian Rebellion, and American Indian Movement, NE Woodland Chapter. The 6 disciplinary rules. Number 1, members will conduct themselves in a manner to bring credit to the coalition and will treat others with respect and politeness. Number 2, members will be sober when on Rainbow Coalition business and will not engage in any criminal activity while a member. Number 3, no member will engage in violence except in the extremity of self-defense. Number 4, members will not gossip nor be divisive to the unity of the Second Rainbow Coalition. Number 5, members will not act as informers nor work against the purpose of the Second Rainbow Coalition. And number 6, nobody is authorized to speak on the Second Rainbow Coalition unless authorized to do so. And that is the statement of unity. All right, and with that, we will begin reading the. I just saw that Cleo was here. There we go. Sorry, Cleo. Sorry, Cleo, for not inviting you sooner. I was reading the statement of unity.
It's fine.
Also, I don't hear the echo now, so that's fine. But anyways, we will now begin reading the second. We'll now begin reading chapter 17 of Ojibwa Warrior. Now let me just pull it up. Ojibwa Warrior PDF. Sorry about this, y'all. There we go. There we go. Okay, chapter 17. Okay, I'm going to screen share it right now. Okay, there we go. Share. Alrighty. Can y'all see this?
Not yet. Can you zoom in another once or twice?
There we go. Can you see this?
Yes, thank you.
Gotcha. Comrade Rob, can you see this? I hope he sees this. Chapter 17. The waters of justice have been polluted. I don't care. And I submit to you that it doesn't make any difference if conditions on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation are good or bad. I don't care if the 1868 treaty was violated by the United States. Prosecutor R.D. Hurd, U.S. Attorney, South Dakota. There was a manhunt on, and I was the prey. The feds were determined to get me, not only for Wounded Knee, but also for the Custer Uprising. Kamuk and I were hiding out with friends in Rapid City, but that was too close to Pine Ridge, which was swarming with agents and marshals. We got hold of a car and drove to Utah. For a short while, we found shelter in a Gosiet reservation. Sorry, I'm probably going to pronounce these names wrong. Josiet reservation southwest of the Great Salt Lake. When it became clear bail money was not forthcoming, we moved on to Canada. There, we were joined by Ron Petit and his wife, Cheryl. They brought with them my 9-year-old son, DJ, a child of my former marriage to Jeanette. Jeanette. Kamuk, DJ, and Cheryl drove across Canada, across the Canadian border without incident. Ron and I crossed on foot through the woods, and we picked up on the other side. From there, we drove all the way to the Northwest Territory, finally arriving at Yellowknife, on the northern edge of the Great Slave Lake. Even there, we could not stay due to a silly accident. Ron lost his briefcase after leaving it on the roof of the car at a gas station. It fell off into the road. Someone picked it up, found Ron's gun and some AIM papers inside, and took it to the police. The next day, there was an article on the local newspaper about the presence of AIM at Yellowknife. It said that the AIM member was a certain Ron Petit, and that among his possessions was a handgun. So we had to make ourselves scarce. We took a small float plane that friends had chartered for us to a place at the end of the world called Ray Lakes. It was near the northernmost edge of the continent. The only way you could get there was by a plane. We landed on one of the lakes, but by then it was autumn and already getting cold. We had brought enough groceries to last us 3 months, boxes and boxes of provisions. We took a lot of salt to cure meat because we intended to hunt with the rifles we had brought along. We decided to build a log cabin. We had a chainsaw and axes, everything we needed. We settled among thousands of lakes and islands. The lakes were shallow, usually only 8 to 10 feet deep. The area was supposedly teeming with game, particularly moose. A lot of the deer and moose antlers were lying around everywhere, and we often saw hides tacked to the outside walls of local Indian homes. Years before, disgusted with the alcoholism at Yellowknife, the current chief of Ray Lakes had taken a band of about 100 people up north. They wanted to make a new settlement there where there were neither drugs nor alcohol. First, they scouted by plane, then traveled north up the lake system. Sometimes they were faced to carry their boats across land, but they mostly rowed across water. Eventually, they made their settlement at the place they had picked from the air. They built wood frame houses and log cabins. They had no way of bringing in large supplies of any kind because there were no roads to Ray Lakes. The people Northern Dene were very hospitable. Chief Ray extended his hospitality to us, and we stayed at his place while we built our log cabin. He told us, "We will help you. All the logs you need are right here. If you build with green logs, you'll have problems next year. They'll start to buckle from the sun, so use only dry wood." We said we'll build it to last only this winter, then we'll see what happens next. As the weather turned sharp, we finished the cabin and moved in. Next, Chief Ray's men showed us how to fish with nets. The catch out on the lakes was 80 to 90 fish every time the nets were brought in. Our new friend showed us how to hang up the fish in little dugouts, which were covered over with logs to keep bears out. The fish they had already caught would feed the people through the winter, and it was by then cold enough that the fish would not spoil. The settlement was home to a number of dogs, and the people gave each of them a big fish every day. Luckily, there were enough fish for both the people and the dogs. We also went duck hunting and did well with it. Strangely enough, we didn't see any big game although we knew there had to be some around because of the antlers we saw everywhere. We were pretty much cut off from the rest of the world. In a way, I liked it. The five of us alone in nature with the nightly concert of wolf and coyote howl. Just when we had gotten used to our new lifestyle, a message reached us from our AIM friends. It said, Dennis, we need you back. We have bail money for you. Hurry. I told Ron and Cheryl, I have to go, and I'll take Kamuk and DJ with me. The money is there, so after I make bail, I'll return. I've made my decision. I'll leave our stuff here except for some clothes and things we need for the journey. The three of us flew back to Yellowknife with the person who brought the message. Some AIM members and sympathizers met us at the airport, then took us to a house where we were fed. I asked the folks who had picked us up if they could provide a plane and pilot for the rest of the trip. We waited for 2 days. Then Doug Durham, a pilot who claimed to be an AIM sympathizer, picked us up in a private plane. In a private plane my AIM friends had hired and flew us back to the States. I hadn't wanted to risk flying on commercial airlines because I would likely be busted by immigration officials. Doug flew us south at treetop level, crossing the border into North Dakota and down into Rapid City. We were almost out of gas when we landed. The needle was resting on E as we touched down. I thanked him for the ride and left him there, but that was not the last time I was to see of Doug Durham. When I was arrested for the first time so long ago for being drunk, my bail was set at something like $25. I had worried back then that I could not make the bail, and I thought I would be in jail for a long time. Now with the Wounded Knee indictment, my bail was set at $150,000, and I thought, well, I'll be in the slammer for the rest of my life. In addition to the many counts against me, I was looking at a third felony count commonly called the bitch, the habitual criminal act, which carried it into automatic life sentence. As far as I was concerned, I should have stayed at Wounded Knee and fought it out to the death. Also, I was facing 85 years in prison on charges stemming from the Custer riot alone. Bill Janklow, South Dakota's Attorney General, hated AIM and everything it stood for. We heard we had vowed to pull all AIM people behind bars for a very long time, or preferably 6 feet under. He had publicly said the best thing to do with Dennis Banks was to put a bullet through his head. I was Janklow's favorite man to hate. At this time, the government's strategy seemed to be prosecute. It didn't matter whether a guilty verdict would hold up on appeal. Prosecute. It didn't matter if an acquittal was certain. Prosecute. Use perjured witnesses if necessary, but prosecute. It didn't matter if the case was weak or even if it was so trivial as to be absurd. Prosecute. Get the leaders, but also get the humblest spear carrier. Prosecute. The idea was to tie up AIM and all of its resources in never-ending court battles. There were 4 major trials and a number of minor ones stemming from the event at Wounded Knee. 2 of the big ones were the so-called leadership trials, in which the accused were Russell Means, Leonard Prodog, Stan Holder, Carter Camp, Pedro Bezanet, and me. Pedro was already dead when the trials opened, murdered by Wilson's goons. The remaining 5 of us were originally to be tried as one group, but later we were separated. Bruce and I were tried in St. Paul, Minnesota, before Judge Frederick Nicole, while Crow Dog, Carter, and Stan were tried by Judge Edward McManus in Cedar Rapids, Iowa. The other trials were to take place before Judge Bottom in Sioux Falls, South Dakota. No less than 127 of our people were charged in this trial. Nationwide, some 1,200 men and women were arrested because they were AIM members or supporters, anti-Wilson Oglalas, or in some way connected with the occupation of Wounded Knee. Another trial dealt with the riot at Custer, and I was one of the chief defendants. Naturally, with all this facing us, going back to Ray Lakes was out of the question. So I sent word to Ron and Cheryl Petit to come on home. There was an 11-count indictment against Roos and me for larceny, burglary, assault, theft, interference with a federal officer, creation of armed roadblocks, arson, possession of destructive devices, aiding, abetting, counseling, commanding, or inducing commotion of various crimes and conspiracy. Even I was impressed. We managed to get a formidable defense team. Roos was represented by Mark Lane and William Kunstler. My own attorney was Larry Leventhal, Ken Thielsen, and Doug Hall. Raymond Rubidoux was in charge of general strategy for the whole defense team. Of these 6 men, Bill Kunstler was probably the best known. He was brilliant. During his defense of the Chicago 7 in 1968, he had court with ruffled hair, rumpled clothes, scuffed shoes, and his necktie out of place. His trademark was a pair of eyeglasses perched high on top of his head instead of on his nose. He had a wonderful way with their jurors. He could play them like an experienced angler plays fish. I sometimes thought he should have been an actor instead of an attorney. I liked him very much, and we became friends. Kenneth Thielsen was a good man and also became a friend. He was a first-class lawyer, very sharp and able to swoop down like a hawk on any lie or error on the part of the prosecution. Mark Lane was a great showman and good at sniping out any misconduct on the part of the prosecution. At times, he was wild on his accusations and theories of conspiracies. He wrote a well-known book of his own investigations into the assassination of John F. Kennedy. He was flamboyant, sometimes theoretical, making scenes and shouting at the judge. Raymond Rubidoux, a Lakota who had his practice in Rapid City, was Ames' lawyer. He was a strategist, always keeping his eye fixed on the big picture. Larry Leventhal was an expert in Indian law and a leading figure in many of our trials. Doug Hall was a very capable lawyer from New York City. Jay Schulman, a specialist in jury selection, rounded out our defense team. Judge Fred Nicole was a decent, no-nonsense kind of person and open to reason. At the beginning of the trial, he believed in the FBI as the protector of the people, fighting crime wherever it existed. That's bullshit. He looked upon AIM as a bunch of troublemakers, but still he conducted the trial proceedings in a deliberate, sensitive, and fair manner. Before becoming a judge, Nicole had been a newspaper and radio reporter, and had also taught college courses in history and journalism. I believe his background in these fields, with their emphasis upon objectivity, made him a fair man. The chief prosecutor was R.D. Hurd, a bored-looking man who, over the course of the trial, would perjure himself, bring in tainted witnesses, and withhold evidence if he thought it would help him to get a conviction. For this, Hurd was awarded a medal by U.S. Attorney General Saxby and named Prosecutor of the Year. Hurd liked loud clothing, checkered jackets, and brightly colored pants. He thought that was what important people in New York wore. Hurd was assisted by David Ginnap, an assistant U.S. attorney from Sioux Falls, by U.S. Attorney William Clayton, and by Earl Kaplan from the Justice Department in Washington, D.C. For For the duration of the trials, the AIM office at Rapid City was split and transferred to St. Paul for the leadership trials and to Sioux Falls for the non-leadership trials. I always wondered why Clyde and Vernon Bellecourts were tried at Sioux Falls. Surely they were leaders just as Roos, Crow Dog, Carter, and I were. My and Roos's trial opened on January 8th, 1974. Judge Nicole later called it the longest and most bizarre political trial of this country. Originally, we did not want Judge Nicole on the trial because we thought he might be biased, as he came from South Dakota. We made a survey and taken polls that proved we could never get a fair trial in that state. So we filed for a change of venue. The judge granted it, shifting the trial to St. Paul, and made us feel a lot better. Nicole came with us, however. The face-off between prosecution and defense became in a federal courthouse on top of a bluff beside the Mississippi River. It was a cold, dark day with patches of snow on the ground. The temperature hovered around zero. We did not know it then, but the trial would last 80 and a half months, of which 6 months would be consumed by prosecution witnesses. The first month was entirely occupied by jury selection. The judge wanted to see everyone, Bruce, me, the prosecution, and our defense team in his chambers before the trial opened to lay down the ground rules for how the trial was to proceed. Nicole's manner was reserved, as cold as the weather outside. He said, "Well, gentlemen, as far as the charge of venue goes, I can assure you I had good reason to grant you that over 2 months ago. Even this morning, as I was getting on the plane, I met an old friend of mine. At least I had thought of him as an old friend. He said to me, you ought to just line them up against the wall. He meant you, the AIM leadership. If that's what a friend of mine is saying, I can imagine what people who are not my friends are up to. But we will proceed and try to get a fair trial." We went in the courtroom where Roos and I made our opening statements. We wore our hair neatly braided and wrapped in strips of red cloth. Each of us with an eagle feather dangling from one braid to give us strength. I said, "Ladies and gentlemen, we are having this trial here in Minnesota, even though the action took place at Wounded Knee, South Dakota, because we filed for a change of venue. We would not get a fair trial anywhere in South Dakota. Even this morning, the judge told us that a friend from South Dakota told him that they should just line us up and shoot us without a trial." Nicole shouted, Mr. Banks, what I tell you in my chambers is confidential." I continued it, "And that's why we are here, because of the prejudice and hatred for the people like that with murder in their hearts. Mr. Banks, shut up or I'll be thrown into jail for contempt of court." I persisted. The marshal stood up, uncertain. They knew they should do something, but what? The judge was still yelling at me. "Mr. Banks, that's enough." And that's how the trial began. In my opening statement, I also said, "Let the people decide who is guilty of crimes at Wounded Knee. When the American people see evidence of poverty, brutal conditions, and shotgun murders, they will have no choice but to find the U.S. government guilty." On February 27th, 1973, members of the Oglala Sioux Nation began a most historic event that was destined to change the course of Indian history, to change the attitudes of white America, and to certainly change the police that were established by Commissioner of Indian Affairs J.D. Atkins. The Indians must be taken out of the reservation through the door of the General Allotment Act, and he must be imbued with the exalted egotism of American civilization, so that he will say "I" instead of "we," and "this is mine" instead of "this is ours." Wounded Knee represented to the Oglala Sioux and to Indian people all across the country a desperate attempt to bring about justice. What is so significant is that Indians and non-Indians alike came together to bring back our basic human rights. This is only a small portion of what I said that day. I felt the jury had a favorable impression of my words. Roos also spoke. He made a brilliant, stirring speech that had a powerful impact on his listeners. Then the trial began with tedious allegations and endless charges that sounded lucrative. As the days moved into weeks, we saw and heard the FBI produce evidence that we knew was false, misleading, and perjurious. There was large-scale and obvious governmental misconduct. The judge frequently had to remind the prosecution that its role was not to win the case, but to see that justice was done. Each day, as we sat through the testimonies against us, we felt sadness and anger, but there were also moments of hilarity. One of the funniest things that happened was when the prosecution put Agnes Gildersleeve on the witness stand. Agnes was the 72-year-old wife of the owner of the Wounded Knee trading post. As one of the last witnesses for the prosecution, she testified to what Russell Means and I had been doing to her trading empire, how she saw us carrying weapons, and so on. She said, well, Mr. Banks had on a yellow shirt and wore his hair in red string braids. The judge asked how she could remember all of this, and she replied, I have what is called a photographic memory. Your Honor, I could look at this crowd here today in the audience, and I could tell you later that he had red wrappings, and 20 years from now, I'll tell you the same thing. In cross-examination, Bill Kunstler tried to catch her in some inconsistency. She was on the stand for 3 days, and Bill couldn't shake her testimony. He told us, she's just too good. I can't trip her up. So he finally said, no further questions, Your Honor. Judge Nicole said to Agnes, well, you certainly have a good memory, Mrs. Gildersleeve. She agreed. That's right, Your Honor. I do have a fantastic memory. When she was excused, she got up, walked to a door, opened it, and left the courtroom. After some time had passed, the same door suddenly opened, and Agnes came out red-faced from the broom closet. The jury saw her mistake and burst out laughing. She was so embarrassed that she had waited for the court to focus its attention on further proceedings before she would come out. She tried to sneak away, but Kunstler saw her and quipped, Agnes, dear, so much for that photographic memory, huh? Kunstler had a knack for finding humor in the testimony of the prosecution's witnesses. At one point, he cross-examined an FBI undercover agent named Stanley Heel. Heel was part Indian and had dressed himself like an Aimster, playing the I'm a traditional American Indian card. Kunstler had some fun with him. Kunstler, Agent Keel, do you customarily wear your hair long? Keel, yes. Kunstler, why is that? Because I am a traditional Indian. Kunstler, how long have you worn your hair that way? Keel, 2.5 years. Kunstler, and your bone choker, is that traditional also? Keel, yes, sir. And how long have you been an informant for the FBI? Keel, 2.5 years. Even the judge cracked up at that one. Though we sometimes encountered such absurdity, it was the government's audacity that was revealed again and again during the trial. In spite of the prosecution's attempt to cover them up, cases of misconduct were revealed that included the use of false witnesses who testified to criminal activities by Russell Means and me that had never taken place. Other cases of misconduct included perjury, illegal wiretapping, unconstitutional use of the military and domestic affairs, obstruction of justice, cover-up of serious crimes, failure to furnish relevant information to the judge and the defense, illegally infiltrating an informer into the defense team, violating court order by failing to produce Nixon's Wounded Knee tape, withholding financial records, eavesdropping, interference by the FBI with media coverage, and so on and on and on. The whole trial was grotesque, a half sad, half comical travesty of justice right to the end. To cover the innumerable instances of governmental misconduct here would make this chapter alone the size of New York City telephone book. For a start, the prosecution trotted out 16-year-old Alexander Richards, who swore that he had seen Roos and me commit certain crimes at a time when Richards was actually in jail. It was easy to prove that he perjured himself, and of course, his testimony was stricken from the record. The prosecution regularly withheld information the defense was entitled to see. Nicole finally forced the government to hand over its file on us. 315-981 documents. So, some of them up to 600 pages long. It was at Mount Everest stack of surveillance. Shaking his head, Nicole remarked, if this government falls, it won't be because of subversion. It will topple under the weight of its own paperwork. During the trial, our defense discovered a document in which Joseph Trimback, special FBI agent for Minnesota, North Dakota, and South Dakota, ordered a wiretap at Wounded Knee. The prosecution had stood in the courtroom and denied that such wiretapping had occurred. Nicole commented, "It is my feeling that the prosecution's offering of testimonies that are directly contradicted by a legal document in their possession was inexcusable and is an impossible violation of the American Bar Association standards." He added, "If our system of freedom is to be preserved, the FBI must be servile to our system of justice, not manipulator of it." Once Kunstler noticed that a door behind the bench stood slightly ajar. He tiptoed over and jerked the door open. Two FBI agents toppled into the courtroom, almost falling over each other. They had been eavesdropping on a judge. Nicole was furious. The most serious instance of governmental misconduct involved the sad case of Lousy Moves Camp, the son of Ellen Moves Camp, one of the finest of our women warriors, one I greatly admired. She was one of the women who challenged the chiefs to stand up and fight Wilson, to protect the people from the goons, and to do something about the corruption in the tribal government. She was among those who urged us to make our stand at Wounded Knee, rather than underneath the guns of the feds and the goons at Pine Ridge. Louis had been on our defense committee in St. Paul, but in all honesty, he was no great help. He did a lot of hell raising, getting drunk and using drugs. I had to ask him to leave the AIM house. He didn't go very far, however. He was present during the first 2 months of my trial. Then he simply disappeared. We did not know that he was awaiting his own trial on charges of robbery, assault with a deadly weapon, and assault causing bodily harm, or that he was facing a 20-year sentence. He disappeared because he went to the FBI to volunteer to testify against us if the charges against him were dropped and if he were paid as well. Wow. So Lou and the FBI made a deal. In August, the government suddenly announced that they had a star witness who would identify Russell Means and Dennis Banks as conspirators, connecting us to numerous crimes that we would be charged with. The following morning, they brought out their surprise witness. And it was Louis Moves Camp. It shook everyone up. Oh my God, it's Louis. His mother, Ellen, was in the audience. She could be heard asking, "What is he doing? What's he up here for?" They swore Louis in, and Hearn began to question him. Hearn, on or about March 3rd, were you at Wounded Knee? Moves Camp. Yes. Heard. And how long did you stay at Wounded Knee? Moves Camp. I stayed there for a month and a half. Heard. Were you there every day? Moves camp. Yes, I was. Heard. And did you see Dennis Banks stealing from the trading post? Moves camp. Yep, I did. Heard. And did you see Dennis Banks and Russell Means carrying guns? Moves camp. I did. Heard. Did you see them arming other people and ordering them to use the weapons? To all these questions, the predictable reply was yes. The prosecution needed to link us to the charges against us. After many such questions and answers, Ellen jumped up and cried, Louis, why are you doing this? You weren't even there. You're lying. You're lying. I don't even know who you are acting this way. Louis, why? She was weeping. I felt so sad for her. It was very hard. Finally, the marshals pulled her away and took her outside, where she continued to sob. Here was one of our great women leaders watching her own son perjure himself, turning against everything she had worked so hard for, lying for the prosecution. The week was over, so we had 2 days before we went back to court. Somebody told us that Louis had been in jail just before he appeared in our trial. So Mark Lane went to River Falls, Wisconsin, to investigate the tip. He questioned the local sheriff, who told him that Louis was in a motel under the protection of 2 FBI agents. Mark discovered that Louis had cut a deal to get himself cleared of the charges against him. The agents had been coaching him on what to say during the testimony, but then something happened that the FBI hadn't expected. One night, after spending the evening drinking with his 2 protective custody federal agents, Louis raped a young woman he had met in the bar. She called the police and the sheriff and had Louis arrested. Then the FBI called the sheriff and told him, "Hey, this is our principal witness at the Banks Means trial in St. Paul, and we want him released into our custody and not charged. As a matter of fact, we don't want this episode even to be mentioned because it could ruin our case." The rape charge was squashed. After Mark heard all this from the River Falls sheriff, he called me early in the morning and said, "Dennis, you have to get over here quick." We got together with Mark, his associates, and our attorneys. Mark related what he had found. We all were grinning by the end of this report. I said, "Well, all right." We spent the whole weekend preparing to cross-examine Louis, which would be Mark Lane and Ken Thielsman's job. Then we got a surprise call from Carol Standing Elk in Oakland, California. Carol told us this guy, Louis Moves Camp, was at Stanford University on March 7th giving a speech. We know it because we taped it. The people of the Monterey Television Cable Company have him on camera. This was proof that he was in California at a time when he claimed to have been at Wounded Knee. I said, "Listen, you've got to air express this to us tonight, or better yet, hand carry it." Carol got on a plane and arrived in Minneapolis later that same day with the videotape. On the next morning, we watched it. We heard and saw the person doing the interview say, "Here it is March 7th, and we are here with the people in support of the action by Indians at Wounded Knee. The spokesperson with us today is Louis Moves Camp, who has agreed to talk about the issue involved." And there was Louis on camera. I said, "Man, oh man, we're going to tear him up." It was Monday, August 27th, the government's last rebuttal day, as it turned out. Louis was on the stand again. Heard conducted the questions. And Louis went on and on like a parrot, giving the kind of answers the prosecution had coached him to give. Our attorneys had decided not to make any objections early on, but to allow him to talk to trap himself. Finally, Mark Lane thought it was time to end the charade and let Louis have it. "Lane, Mr. Moves Camp, you say you were at Wounded Knee from March 7th until maybe a week before it ended." Moves Camp, "That's right. So that means every day you were there." Moves Camp, "Yeah, that's right." Lane, "That does not mean that you came out and went to Rapid City or Sioux Falls or on behalf of the occupants, but stayed there all the time." Moves Camp, "Yes." Lane, so that means you could not have gone to New York City or California to make an appearance on behalf of the Wounded Knee people. Moves camp. No, I was there. I never left from March 3rd until a week before it ended. Lane, you said you saw Mr. Dennis Banks on March 8th and that you observed he and Mr. Russell Means commit the following acts. Marks went over some of the allegations while Louis answered yes to all of the related questions. And then Mark asked, Lane, Mr. Moves Camp, before you came to testify here, where were you staying? Moves Camp, I was staying at a hotel in Wisconsin this past month. Lane, were you arrested in Wisconsin this past month? Moves Camp, no. Lane, do you know a girl named Brenda? Moves Camp, no. Lane, do you know the sheriff of River Falls, Wisconsin? Moves Camp, no. Lane, these people mean nothing to you? Moves Camp, no. Then Mark stunned. Then Mark stunned the courtroom. Ladies and gentlemen of the jury, first of all, Mr. Moves Camps says that he never left Wounded Knee after March. We would like to show you a tape. We would like to show you a tape. He darkened the room and put the tape on, and there was Louis giving a speech at Stanford University on March 7th. Then Mark said, ladies and gentlemen, Mr. Moves Camp says that he was not arrested in Wisconsin and that he does not know the young women whose name I report on an incident of rape, after which the FBI went over to River Falls and had Louis released into their custody and charges dropped. The courtroom was buzzing. The judge said, will the prosecution and the defense please approach the bench? There will be a 15-minute recess. We went to Judge Nicole's chambers. The judge was furious, absolutely livid. He looked at the prosecution with fire in his eyes. All right, you better have an explanation for this, a damn good one too, because I am on the verge of dismissing this case due to the governmental misconduct. We'll find out about this. If this man, Louis Moves Camp, has been in jail and these things that I have just heard are true, I'm telling you right now, this case is a hair away from dismissal. We all filed back into the courtroom and the questioning proceeded. Williams, on the FBI agents who had held Moves Camp in custody in Wisconsin, took the stand. He related that on the evening of August 14th, 2 weeks previous, he, the other agent, and Louis went on a binge, traipsing from bar to bar. According to Williams' own testimony, he downed 9 scotch and waters while Price, the other agent, contented himself with a mere 5. What and how much Louis drank was not mentioned, but he probably swallowed more of the hard stuff than his 2 drinking buddies combined. Nicole Drilly remarked that the 2 agents had been doing a fair job of keeping up with Louis. At 1 a.m., when the bars closed, William and Price were ready to call it a night, but Louis was coming on to a girl in her late teens named Brenda. Louis told the agents that he wanted to take her back to his room, but they told him that this type of arrangement was impossible. They left Moves Camp, the girl, and another couple sitting in the bar and went back to the motel to sleep. In the morning, the 2 agents had a rude awakening when Louis called from a place where he was having breakfast. He announced that he was in some trouble, that the girl they had seen talking with the night before had gone to the police, charging that Louis had raped her. The local sheriff was preparing to have Louis arrested and placed in custody pending further investigation. In court, Lane asked Agent Williams about this. Lane, did you get dressed and go down immediately to pick up Louis Moves Camp? Williams, no, I didn't. What did you do? Williams, I went back to sleep. If you've ever eaten with Louis, you would understand that. Lane, why does it take Louis a long time to eat generally? Williams, he usually eats 2 breakfasts. Testimony revealed that after the agents dragged themselves out of the bed that morning, they went down to persuade the River Falls sheriff to drop the charge and release Louis into their custody. Understand Williams tried to justify getting Louis released by painting the victim as a slut who enticed Louis to have sex with her, and by making it appear that the whole event was just a mutually agreed upon romp in the hay. Fucking disgusting. Prosecutor Heard had known all about the rape charge, but he had told the judge that Louis had been arrested for public intoxication. In the judge's chambers, Heard twice denied knowing anything about the rape charge. When it was finally proven that he had lied about it, Heard tried to squirm out of the accusation by saying that he had been asked whether Louis had been charged with rape. And since Louis' charges had been dropped, Heard claimed with no was not a lie. That kind of trickery did not sit well with Judge Nicole. He said to the jury, Mr. Heard deceived the court up here at the bench in connection with the Moose Camp incident in Wisconsin. It hurts me deeply, and it is going to take me a long time to forget it. When I finally decided after the hearing behind closed doors and chambers that the sordid story was going to come out after all, Mr. Heard broke down briefly and cried. I don't know whether it was his conscience or his humiliation. Heard replied, Your Honor. Heard replied, Your Honor, we were not aware. We did not know that Moves was arrested. Then he reversed himself and stammered, Your Honor, it appears that the FBI admits the possibility that Moves Camp was in jail for assault. Finally, Heard was forced to conclude, Your Honor, we move to have all the testimony of Louis Moves Camp in regard to Wounded Knee stricken from the record. Nicole promptly instructed the jury to ignore what they had heard in Louis' testimonies. Basically, the trial was over at that point, but there were still a few odds and ends to be taken care of. There was one more witness, Cole Volney Warner, of the 82nd Airborne, was supposed to be a witness for the prosecution, but as it turned out, his testimony was favorable to the defense by proving that the Army had been involved at Wounded Knee in violation of the Constitution. After hearing his testimony, the judge dismissed 5 charges against us, saying, as long as I am a federal judge, the military of this country will never run civilian affairs or have anything to do with the execution of the law. I was a Navy commander myself, and I served my country well. But I remember this is a country run by civilian rule, not by military rule. These 5 charges concerning Ames' confrontation with the Army are dismissed. Special Agent Ron Williams was one of the last on the witness stand. He sputtered so many falsehoods that the judge asked him, do you know what perjury is? When Williams got down off the stand, both Roos and I stood up to place him under a citizen's arrest. A scuffle ensued and Williams ran out of the courtroom with us chasing him down six flights of stairs and out of the building. The St. Paul police were trying to protect him as they ran down the road behind us with their guns drawn. The cops finally managed to put him into a squad car and take off with him. It was a bizarre scene. Bruce, me, and a few other people chasing an FBI agent down the road in the middle of winter in St. Paul, Minnesota, like something out of an old silent Keystone cop movie. Finally, it was over. The judge was fed up with all of the lies, perjury, and continual misconduct on the part of the prosecution. On September 17th, one of the jurors got sick. The prosecution refused to let the remaining 11 jurors decide the case for fear of losing it. The judge blew up and, rather than declare a mistrial, dismissed all the remaining charges. For over an hour during his final summation, the judge raked Heard over the coals. The U.S. attorney may strike hard blows, but he is not at liberty to strike foul ones. I am forced to conclude that the prosecution acted in bad faith at various times throughout the course of the trial. The fact that instance of misconduct formed a pattern throughout leads me to believe that this case was not prosecuted in good faith. The waters of justice have been polluted. Dismissal is, I believe, the appropriate cure for the pollution in this case. As for the FBI, Nicole concluded, it is hard for me to believe that the FBI, which I revered for so long, has stooped so low. It was only a victory for Roos and me, but a triumph for AIM and every Indian in the country. I also want to give credit to Judge Nicole. As the trial progressed, Nicole changed his mind completely. We started out as opponents and ended up as friends. That he could overcome his prejudice made me respect him. He grew in stature day by day. The trial began with the judge yelling at me and ended in his home with me eating a delicious home cooked meal served by his wife. And that is chapter 17. So what do y'all think? That was a lot of information. Yes, Chloe?
Yeah, I just wanted to say this was an excellent chapter.
It was. My God.
About the courtroom antics of the federal prosecutors, the FBI, the horrible people who they send into our organizations as these confidential infiltrators, and who really try to criminalize us. And at the same time, they are the ones who are the criminals, because what we were doing and what we have been doing and what AIM was doing was positive and not negative.
It was for liberation.
Yes, it was toward the liberation and what is deserving for the entire
indigenous people.
Indigenous people, like the nations of the indigenous people. So I just wanted to say that.
100% comrade. And when I heard that that guy, I think his name was Moves Camps, when he actively betrayed AIM and started saying lies just to get his ass off of the charges made against him, that was just fucking disgusting, and it just shows that when it comes to opportunists and revisionists and people who are against us, they can look just like us, they can act just like us, they can speak just like us, but their intentions are completely against the liberation and self-determination of the masses. And we always have to be vigilant when it comes to purging and taking out these revisionists and these opportunists from our organization, so that way they don't cause harm.
Yeah, I just also wanted to say that I met and was friends with both Russell Means and Dennis Banks.
Really?
Yes.
Wow.
As a member of the Black Panther Party and the League of Revolutionary Black Workers, I believe that I met both of them and had dinner with them, possibly in my apartment. One of them possibly in my apartment, and I think it was Dennis Banks that had dinner in my apartment in New York. But this is, they were great men. And Leonard Peltier, what we haven't talked about and what we need to talk about is the struggle to free Leonard Peltier, who was involved in all of these struggles too. So I just wanted to raise that.
No, yeah, it's amazing that you knew.
Yes.
That you knew. They knew Dennis Banks and Russell Means. It's a shame that Dennis Banks passed away. It's a shame. I would have loved to meet him. He sounded like an absolutely amazing guy.
I said brilliant and very sweet and very kind and very personable. And a revolutionary struggler.
Oh, indeed. But yeah, this just shows right here how the FBI will do anything and everything to uphold the interests of the capitalists, and that things are only illegal when it benefits them. Because they made so many courtroom misconducts and so many lies and perjury. Yeah, they can just walk it off because what's considered legal or illegal all depends on what benefits the oppressor class. It all depends on what benefits the bourgeois. So if it benefits them, it's not legal. But when it comes to the liberation of the people, oh no, that's illegal. That's wrong. You know. So the fact that they engaged in so many misconducts, and the fact that that fucking FBI guy ran out of the courtroom and was protected by the fucking police when he was wrong and when he was found guilty, that just fucking shows that fucking shows that they do not care about justice or what is right or wrong. They only care about upholding their own interests. They only care about upholding white supremacy and the contradictions of capitalism, and they will do anything and everything to demonize, dehumanize, and villainize liberation movements. You know, Jesus, like just reading this, like it just made me so upset just like hearing all the fucking lies made about AIM. Like,
And so
god damn.
Comrade, if you can imagine what they did to AIM, because the brother wrote it in this book, you cannot imagine how much more horrors they committed against the Black Panther Party.
Oh yeah, with COINTELPRO. Yeah, I can't imagine.
Even I have been victimized consistently in my life since I joined the Black Panther Party in 1969, and they have never left me alone. And they still have people running into my life, trying to figure out where I'm coming from, trying to demonize me, trying to so many things, trying to make the positive things that I contributed look like they're negative. It's really a horrible thing. It's really terrible. Harassing my family, just on a consistent basis, and they continue to do so up to today. And I'm 76 years old, going on 77.
Jesus
Yes.
Christ. I am sorry that you have to deal with that shit, comrade. I am so sorry that you have to deal with that constant harassment and that constant bullying from the FBI and the state. You're an amazing comrade, and I'm glad that I could meet you, and I'm so glad that I can talk to you and learn from you, because you're really awesome.
I can't wait to hear from Rob.
Same. I think Rob can't speak right now because he said I still can't talk. I hope everything's okay, Rob, because I would love to hear what you have to say about this book. However, with that being said, I don't want to run this too long. For the viewers who are going to watch this, I don't want to take up too much space so that way they don't get scared when they see if this is long or not. So we're currently 1 hour and 15 minutes into this. The maximum that I would go to is 1 hour and 30 minutes, and that's usually the best time to end this, But all power, hell yeah. But yeah, I'm just like, just all the lies that they said about AIM, about how they were fucking arming people, and how they fucking and all the shit. It was just fucking sad to see, because AIM, as well as the Black Panther Party, as well as every other liberation movement, has only fired back in self-defense. It was never them engaging in these firefights first. It has always been the FBI, and I know you weren't here for the last chapter that we read, Comrade Silver, but if you had been here for the last chapter, it was just like, God, the FBI were using sniper rifles, machine guns, assault rifles, hundreds of thousands of rounds. Meanwhile, AIM only had a couple hundred rounds, and and barely shot as many times as the military did. So just hearing this, it just shows how they will do anything and everything to demonize, dehumanize, and whitewash these movements to embolden and bolster reactionary sentiments and white supremacists movements, and how they will and how the state will literally break the fucking law because the military is not supposed to engage in domestic affairs. That's the whole thing. They're not supposed to engage in domestic affairs. Yeah, at the Wounded Knee standoff, the military was literally there shooting all these fucking rounds at aim when it is literally illegal for the military to engage in domestic affairs, supposedly at least. So yeah, it's just horrible.
Comrade, I think the thing that we should look at and focus on for ourselves is keeping infiltrators and these informants out of our organization and how this can be done. The one thing that I want to say that's so important is unity. And when we have a tight organization, we should be able to know everybody's family. In other words, if I am your comrade, you should be able to come to my home, meet my husband, meet my family members. If I'm young, I should know who your grandmother is and know your family. Although, as the sisters showed us in this chapter of the book, even your family, you never know, because her son testified against the work that she had been doing all of her life as a leader in the AIM movement. I'm so sad. That saddens me so much to see that. But we have to know that they will be continuing to try to infiltrate our organizations.
And that they'll use anyone that they can, even their own family members. They will use them, and that's really fucking scary. That's like extremely scary and just wild to think about. And that's why we always gotta be vigilant. That's why we always have to engage in things through a critical and dialectical lens, so that way we'll be able to detect these revisionists and these opportunists within our party and take them out to protect the unity of the Vanguard Party, and honestly, I'm just really glad that the judge came around and ended up becoming friends with Dennis Banks, because in so many of these fucking trials, a lot of the time it's usually, how
judges,
yep. Because a lot of times, obviously, these fucking judges incarcerate non-white people, especially non-white people, for years and years. So seeing that the judge in this in this chapter, seeing how he actually overcame his bias and prejudice and actually ended up becoming friends with Dennis Banks, that just kind of warms my heart.
Comrade, I just want to, speaking of judges, that judge is really an outlier of all of the that have historically been overseeing the cases of so many, especially members of the Black Panther Party, the Young Lords, and other activist organizations. Most of them have been white supremacists, like the judges in the Mumia Abu Jamal case. And I just want to give a shout out to all of the political prisoners, again, to Leonard Peltier, to Jamil Alameen, to the ones that have just come out of prison and that are out, Jaleel Montague, Sekou Odinga, Sundiata Akoli, Mutulu Shakur. All of those comrades have just come out of prison after
Wow.
in years, 40 and 50 years. And of course, to Mumia Abu-Jamal and the remaining political prisoners who are in prison at this time. So I just wanted to say that that is one of the things that we should focus on, our own struggles, and especially in the Second Rainbow Coalition.
100%.
That really is an important focus to free our political prisoners and to support the ones that are newly freed.
Indeed, and I am so glad that I'm so glad that they're that the people that they mentioned. I'm so glad that they're free and that they're out of the prison system. Like I have read some of the shit that they have gone through, and I'm just like I wouldn't be able to handle a quarter of the stuff that they went through, like I would break most likely. I would do horrible in a prison system. Like I would not fucking last. So just seeing how much trauma and how much abuse and how much pain they go through in the prison system, it's just horrible. And it's always and I always get happy when our political prisoners and when our comrades end up getting out and being able to be be happy with their families and their comrades.
Yes, comrade, and we should speak to the very many comrades who got out of prison and passed away immediately, like the two brothers from the Angola 3, for instance, like Russell Maroon Schultz. There's so many of the comrades, and like the comrades who died, like Comrade Nur, who died in prison, and their families, what they've been through is horrible. What they have done to us, who were members of these strong and fighting organizations, and the struggle continues. We deserve to continue this struggle in a serious way. And no playing around with this anymore. I say that. No playing around with a state that's whole goal is to occupy our communities and to maintain us in a continual situation of poverty and mass incarceration. I mean, this is just horrible what they're doing, and we have to stand up and we have to fight back. And I'm going to be quiet. I'm going to get off. I'm going to be quiet.
No, please, no. Your takes on this are amazing, and I'm so glad they came to this reading, because if you didn't came, it would be very quiet. It would be very quiet here. To add to what you just said, throughout these chapters that we have read, right, about AIM. I believe that this is your first time attending one of these chapters, but throughout the course of this book, there is an increasing militancy and radicalization within AIM, because in the very beginning of these chapters, I'm talking about when AIM first formed, Dennis Banks wanted to do things peacefully in a way. He wanted to engage in non-violence protests, and he sounded like he was pretty iffy about the idea of militancy. But after he just saw and continued to see how the state continued to oppress his people and subjugate them and exploit them and imprison them and siphoning their surplus value in the prison complex, after he just kept on seeing it, he started to radicalize more and more and more and see
maintain them in poverty, comrade, and maintain them in a life of poverty and struggle just to survive. And this is wrong. This is so wrong in so many 100%. Ways.
100%. No one should be living in such horrible materialistic conditions. No one should be living in such poverty and in such misery, all for the sake a small group of individuals to maximize profit and continue to exploit and siphon our resources and our surplus value, both within our country and outside of it, you know, and and uh, and and it's just so disgusting and horrible seeing how all of these colonized ethnicities are just completely subjugated and barely given anything, all for the sake
And don't
for
forget the lack of health care.
100% lack of health
Health
care,
care is
lack.
a right to all people.
Yep.
Should have free, quality, preventive health care. And there's no
100%.
reason in the world why the people of Native Americans should not have free health care. African Americans, people of color generally, and poor people, we all deserve to have free, quality health care.
100%. 100%. And you know and you know, if it can give you like if there's a service that can give you a happier and longer life, it is a human right, you know, is a human necessity. Healthcare, education, housing, food, clean water, all of these things are human rights.
That's
They
right.
are not. They should not be privileges that are only given and allowed to people who pay tax dollars or who have a good credit score. Like no, like these things are human rights. If it gives you a longer, happier, and more content life, then it is a human fucking right, you know. And the fact that anything and everything within a capitalist society is privatized and commodified
Mhm.
in order to gain and accumulate more capital is just fucking sad.
Yes,
You
and
know,
I
it's
just want to
depressing.
remind comrades that the working people in this country, working people of color, pay way more taxes
Mm-hmm.
cumulatively than the rich do.
100%.
And even if you take it on an individual basis, if you owners of companies, large companies like Amazon, pay less taxes than their own secretaries. And this can be, you know, I'm not lying on them. You can find out this information. This is public information. But we pay way more taxes than they do. But
100%.
they receive the resources that come from the use of those taxes, and we are left with
100%.
nothing.
100%. And you know, when it comes to the stuff, you know, these capitalists will buy off politicians, the president, so on and so forth. They will send out their little lobbyists to buy off these people to pass laws and policies that benefit them. You know, that decrease that decrease how many taxes they have to pay while increasing the taxes that the masses have to pay, especially non-white communities, you know, especially non-white communities. And you know, just, you know, it's just, and this just shows like reading this just shows how there is no such thing as justice or democracy within our system. You know, there's the only democracy that can be had within a capitalist system is a democracy of the capitalists, where they are the only ones that benefit and flourish within a society, while we're left here to struggle and pick up the breadcrumbs that they leave behind, while they're living lavish lives and going and buying yachts and going down into the ocean in a barely constructed submarine with a fucking Xbox controller or whatever. We're left here. We're left with nothing. And if we want change, if we want to have a decent way of living, we need to create a new society with a new socioeconomic system to achieve social, economic, and cultural liberation, you know?
It's
Man,
correct, comrade. I absolutely agree with you. This has been an excellent reading, and I appreciate you guys having me, allowing me to be here. To do
100%.
this. It's been really a good good for me to hear from comrades from other organizations and hear what they're writing in their books.
Mm-hmm.
So this whole book reading thing has been excellent.
Hell yeah. And if you want to join the next book club, we have them every Friday, Sunday, and Monday.
Right.
Friday on 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. Um, Sunday, which is today, at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. But today we started a little bit late because there were some complications. But usually it starts at 2 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Sundays, and
Sunday
on
is
Monday.
usually my day to come.
I'm
I
sorry.
used to come on Sundays. So
You should
thank you.
come on Sunday.
And you did an excellent job reading, by the way,
Thank
Gabby.
you.
And I hope to become friends with you.
Oh hell yeah! I would love to be friends with you as well. You are. I would love to learn from you. And to to learn and grow and struggle alongside you. I want to struggle alongside all of my comrades. Hopefully, once I'm able and once I'm financially stable, I'll be able to to better engage in the struggle and the movement than I am now.
I hope you can come to Memphis when you do. We're living in Memphis, Tennessee now. We've moved from New York to Memphis.
You live in Tennessee?
Yeah.
I live in Florida. So
Okay, we're not
so
far.
yeah, we're not far. Well, I mean, I live like down south in Florida. Like I live around I live around, like down south. Yeah. Anyways, we are currently 1 hour and 33 minutes in, so I do not want to exceed that time. If none of y'all have anything to say, I will be ending the recording.
Thank you so much.
You're
Bye,
welcome,
everybody.
comrade. Bye,
Bye,
everyone.
Brad. Bye, Rob.
And as always, all power to the people.
Oh,
All power. All power. Have a wonderful day, y'all. Have a
You
wonderful
too.
day.